Amidst the frozen lands of the north, where snow blankets the earth year-round and the wind howls like whispers of fate, one name is etched forever into legend: Loki. Not a god of strength like Thor, nor a supreme being like Odin. Loki stands between light and shadow, a two-faced figure, both savior and scourge of the divine. He is the trickster, the one who mocks the order of the universe. Yet it is Loki who, time and again, has helped the gods escape peril. A villain, or merely a victim of fate? The gods fear him, mortals curse him. But history cannot deny this truth. Loki is the link that begins Ragnarok, the legendary end of days, the day the gods fall from their thrones, the day betrayal, pride, and ambition are paid for in blood and fire. In today's tale, we will peel back the layers of Loki's masks to see clearly the double-edged soul that brought Asgard to its knees. And perhaps, in the end, you will realize the one who brings about the apocalypse is not always the villain, but perhaps the only one brave enough to speak the truth. Unlike the gods of Asgard, born of light and noble blood, Loki came from an entirely different realm, Jotunheim, the frozen land of the frost giants. He was the son of Laufey, king of the giants, but from the moment he was born, Loki was cast aside by his own father for being too small, too weak, too different. When the war between Asgard and Jotunheim ended, Odin, the All-Father, found the abandoned child. In a moment both compassionate and calculated, he took Loki back to Asgard, raising him as his own alongside his true-born son, Thor. From then on, Loki grew up within Asgard's golden walls, but he never truly belonged. Though he was called a god, though he wore armor and sat among warriors, Loki always felt like an outsider wrapped in royal cloth. Thor embodied light, strength, and courage. Loki was the opposite: a sharp mind, a cunning soul, a master of illusion, shape-shifting, and emotional manipulation. If Thor wielded a hammer in battle, Loki wielded words like daggers to the mind. But no matter how clever he was, he could never reach the throne Thor held. And there, the slow-burning jealousy took root. Loki was not just skilled in magic, he was a master of disguise. Behind the jokes, the laughter, the biting sarcasm hid the pain of abandonment, a soul constantly asking, "Why must I live in a world not mine? Am I a god or a monster?" But Loki was never simply a traitor. He had helped the gods, sometimes even saving Asgard. It was Loki who helped recover legendary treasures like Thor's hammer Mjolnir or Odin's spear Gungnir. Yet at the same time, he was the one sowing chaos, leading gods into danger, only to return as the so-called savior. He did not betray out of hatred, but because he was forgotten. He did not destroy for love of blood, but to prove his own existence. And out of that chaotic mix, a conflicted Loki was born, both harbinger of disaster and victim of injustices he could never escape. A double-faced man, or a man with two fates? In Odin's eyes, Loki was a pawn to be controlled. In Thor's, an untrustworthy brother. And in Loki's own heart, he may not have known who he was anymore, but one thing is certain: his existence, though denied, laid the first stone for the final battle of the gods. And Loki would not just be a spectator. Loki, by nature a trickster, never acted in predictable ways. He didn't wield swords or seize thrones, but every word, every crooked smile hid a scheme no one could foresee. At first, his mischief was just pranks. He changed shapes to taunt the gods, stole treasures only to return them in more outrageous fashion. Asgard seemed to adapt to his chaos, for truthfully at times, Loki was the only one who could solve their impossible problems. Once, when Asgard's walls were damaged, a giant offered to rebuild them within 3 seasons. In exchange, he demanded the sun, the moon, and the hand of the goddess Freya. The gods agreed, on the condition he completed the task on time. But as the walls neared completion ahead of schedule, Loki was tasked with sabotaging the plan. He did the unthinkable, transformed into a beautiful white mare, seducing the giant stallion, delaying construction. The result? The gods kept their bargain. But Loki, as the mare, became pregnant, and later gave birth to Sleipnir, Odin's eight-legged unstoppable horse. That was Loki, savior and saboteur, in a single move. But not every trick ended in victory. His most devastating and unforgivable act was the death of Baldur, the god of light, symbol of hope and rebirth. Baldur, the most beloved of the gods, was plagued by prophetic dreams of his own death. Terrified, his mother Frigg traveled the cosmos, begging everything, from stones and fire to beasts and winds, not to harm her son. Everything swore an oath of peace, so the gods made it a game, throwing objects at Baldur to prove he was invulnerable. But Loki, ever the loophole seeker, disguised himself as an old woman and approached Frigg. Through careful questioning, he discovered one thing had not been sworn: the mistletoe, too small, too harmless to be feared. Loki took a sprig of mistletoe, sharpened it into a dart, and gave it to Höder, Baldur's blind brother, to throw in the game. No one suspected. The mistletoe pierced Baldur's heart. The god of light fell, and Asgard was drowned in grief. This was no prank. This was Loki's deepest betrayal. The gods were enraged. They captured Loki, bound him with the entrails of his own son, and placed a giant serpent above his head, its venom dripping onto his face for thousands of years. Loki's wife, Sigyn, remained by his side, catching the venom in a bowl, trying to ease her husband's torment. But each time she rose to empty the bowl, drops of poison fell onto Loki's face, and he writhed in agony, his body twisting violently, sending earthquakes through Midgard. He was bound, but his hatred was not. Loki swore revenge, and he waited for Ragnarok, the day when all gods would face their final judgment. Loki, once a jester, had become a symbol of rebellion. And deep within the shadows, he was reborn into something more terrifying than any prophecy foretold. But was Loki truly a traitor? Or simply the first to expose the rot within the divine order? In the bowels of the earth, where darkness reigns and the light of Asgard never reaches, Loki was imprisoned. His body was bound by the entrails of his own son, a punishment not just of the flesh, but of the soul. Above him, a massive serpent dripped venom relentlessly onto a face twisted by rage, bitterness, and pain. Day after day, Sigyn, his loyal wife, stayed by his side, catching each drop in her wooden bowl, trying to soothe the pain. But every time she stood to empty it, poison struck Loki's flesh, and he convulsed. His shudders birthed earthquakes in the realm of men, warnings that vengeance was near. And then Ragnarok began. No one knows exactly when it started. Perhaps when Baldur fell. Perhaps when Loki was betrayed by those he once called family. But when the unending winter, Fimbulwinter, spread its frost and despair across the 9 realms, all doubts vanished. The final hour of the gods had come. Loki's chains dissolved on their own. No one unlocked them, no one came to save him. The fury amassed through centuries cracked them apart. Loki rose, no longer the scorned trickster, but the leader of chaos itself. He summoned his children, beings the gods had cast aside, Jormungandr, the world serpent, stirring from the depths, coiling around the earth, shaking the land. Fenrir, the monstrous wolf, Loki's son and the embodiment of destruction, broke his chains and charged into battle. Hel, goddess of the dead, rallied her army of fallen souls. From the north, Loki led a ship of doom, Naglfar, made from the nails of the dead, sailing through seas of fire toward Asgard. The final battle began. The gods stood face to face with their destiny. Odin faced Fenrir, and fell, devoured by the very beast he once bound. Thor fought Jormungandr, and though he slew the serpent, he staggered a few steps before collapsing, poisoned and dying. Tyr, the god of justice who lost a hand binding Fenrir, fought and fell, buying one last moment of order. And Loki faced Heimdall, guardian of Bifrost, the bridge between worlds. Both fell, as foretold in ancient prophecy. This was no longer a battle between good and evil. It was the inevitable collapse of an order rotting from within. Loki did not fight for power, not for a throne. He fought for truth, for wounds never healed, for a role he never chose but was forced to play. In Ragnarok, the gods died. The world was scorched by Surtur's fire, melted in fury and frozen despair. But from the ashes, a new world slowly emerged. Perhaps Loki fell, but his final laughter echoed through the cosmos, a bitter reminder, "You called me traitor. But you betrayed me first. You called me destroyer, but I built your glory. And when truth no longer has a place, then for rebirth, everything must burn." Loki, the double-edged, the harbinger of the end, forced the gods to confront their own shadows. And when divinity falls, perhaps it is the demon who is most honest. So in the end, what was Loki in the grand saga of the Norse? A traitor who led Baldur to doom and paved the way for Ragnarok? A deceiver, hiding between jokes and betrayal? Or a mirror reflecting the fractures of the divine world? The gods of Asgard built their empire on oaths unbreakable, yet forgot, truth bows to no authority. Loki, with wit, cunning, and the power to pierce every moral mask, revealed that truth. He was not perfect, not even trustworthy. But like the world itself, he was real. He loved, hated, raged, suffered, and never pretended to be divine. While the gods cloaked themselves in halos of justice, Loki alone dared to embrace his darkness. And because of that, when Ragnarok came, he didn't just bring an end, he sowed the seeds of rebirth. A new world, not ruled by immortal gods, but shaped by humans who understand the fragility of truth. Look closely at Loki and ask yourself, if the world wears a mask, is the one who tears it away mad, or the only sane one? In a mythic world where every tale seems scripted by fate, Loki is the only one who broke the rules, and perhaps the only one who was ever truly free.
Thank you so much for taking the time to watch the video. If you found the video helpful and interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any future videos. Wishing you a wonderful day, and see you in the next video.